78644 is brought to you by Wella Foods, Thunderbird Bars, and Texas Hatters. It's the season of feasts, gatherings, and traditions. Sometimes we follow these rituals without even remembering why we started them in the first place. But in a small town, those traditions feel closer and more present than in the hustle of a big city. Here, the focus isn't on consumerism or spectacle. Rather, it's on small groups of people coming together to share conversations, songs, and ideas, and just getting together to see how one another are. In this episode, we'll hear from a mix of voices in our town: longtime residents with deep roots, newcomers seeking clarity and escape, and those who've seen the ebb and flow of change in meaningful ways. This is a celebration of connection, tradition, and the stories that make our community unique. I'm Stephen Collins, and this is 78644.
Hey y'all, looking forward to seeing you. Tell us how it is. Tell us what you're up to. Hey y'all, looking forward to seeing you. Tell us how it is. Tell us what you're up to.
A few years back, I had the chance to produce and record a song for my good friend Jonny Burke. Johnny's a singer-songwriter from New Braunfels who's been a fixture in the Texas music scene now for nearly 20 years. He's a remarkable storyteller, known for writing from the perspective of unique characters and giving voice to those who are often overlooked. One song he brought to me during the time has stayed with me ever since. It's haunting, powerful, and unforgettable. And I wanted to revisit it, so I connected with Jonny over Zoom to talk about the story behind the song and what inspired it.
I was living in Lockhart. Steve still got the studio there. I'm living in Lockhart, and I had recently been, well, for anybody, I guess this is the time to say it. I had been locked up in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice state prison system for about a year. For a couple of years prior to this, I'd gotten out. If you want to do the dateline right now, it was 6 years ago I got out. Yeah, for any of y'all that don't know, I was locked up for multiple DWI charges. I eventually got a felony. If you're listening to this right now, you don't have to drive drunk ever. If you're drinking, we've all got iPhones and stuff now. Do my public service announcement. I was lucky to land back enough on my feet. I was playing shows, and I was planning on making a record, and Steve was just down the street from me. So I called him up. We had talked multiple times about possibly doing something, and yeah, you were gracious enough to really work on this thing, just a whole track for a day, I love doing that, working on one track a day. I had just written the song, and if you listen to the song we're talking about, it's mostly it's not about me personally. Most of those songs of that time period I wrote are not about my experience in prison. It's about the other people that I was around in prison. And yeah, this one comes from the point of view of a guy who's he hasn't been in prison, but his father was in prison, and he's going home on Thanksgiving, and he's it kind of alludes to him being a ne'er-do-weller, that his mom just thinks he's going to be locked up just like his dad. And so it's from his point of view that he's just come home from Thanksgiving, but he didn't come to catch hell from his mom. And I tried to do my best with it. It was one of those ones that came out later from the time I was incarcerated to actually writing it. And so it was so fortuitous that we were able to hook up and work on. Like my job as a writer, when I was writing the song, I felt was connecting that loneliness. Say, I feel it right now when I feel the temperature change, and that's my favorite time of year is when the temperature changes. Growing up here in Texas, where everything was just brutally hot to where you get a cold front, it's going to change people's emotions. You got the holidays coming on shortly after that. And so this was, it's probably why it was written later after my incarceration when I thought back on those people, some of whom became, like brothers to me in the prison system. Not to say that these people didn't do anything wrong, but they were still human beings. And to think of how they were going home for Thanksgiving when I was so lucky to land on my feet to where I had a house, I had a girlfriend, I had a family to go home to. I guess for my job as a writer, always kind of from that Woody Guthrie style of songwriting, representing the misfortunate. Sticking up for the ones that don't have anybody sticking up for them. That was my way of doing it.
I wonder if you wonder about the touch of a stranger. No man asked you, how do you do? Your scowl on the sidewalk, it only spells danger. They cross the street so they do not cross you. And the cable news blast from the living room TV, 'cause you don't watch football, of course. I choked down my turkey, God bless Oscar Mayer. I might as well be eating horse. You're hard on me for a living, and the living is hard on me too. I just came home for Thanksgiving. I didn't come to catch hell from you. Dad sent a postcard. It was postmarked Huntsville. Happy Thanksgiving and all. One stamp spent the money that was left on his books. Do you think you could spare anything at all? And I guess that you think I'll end up like he did if I can't push through all the fray. I'll be sitting in Huntsville, right shit out of luck, locked up in solitaire most of the day. You're hard on me for a living, and the living is hard on me too. I just came home for Thanksgiving. It's a hell of a thing to get through. You said the blessing to the God you don't cherish. said your dad's in jail. So where does this leave us, my beautiful mother? The gravy drips off of your skin. I pick up my napkin and wipe it off for you. I'll come back and visit next Thanksgiving again. You're hard on me for a living, and the living is hard on me too. I just came home for Thanksgiving. I just came home to catch hell from you. It's a wonder how we make it through.
Lockhart Open Studios is a free, self-guided tour featuring 21 artists at 13 stops. Organized by Sarah Lee Hughes and Allison Januser, it offers a glimpse into creative spaces, processes, and works for sale. Find maps and details on Instagram at lockhart.open.studios and enjoy art, snacks, drinks, and conversation. We caught up with the folks from Chaos Woods, who are here in Lockhart making wood sculpture and products by hand, and they will be at the Lockhart Open Studios. We had a good conversation at their studio.
I'm Terry Snow.
And Sarah Snow. Yep, I have a pyrography pen and sort of do the finishing details.
Okay.
I do wood turning, wood carving. That's pretty much what I do. So,
And how long have you guys been doing this?
about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I was working at a cabinet shop before that. Before that, I was a door guy at the bars downtown also.
Terry was starting to do some woodworking and took some classes at ACC, and we started making toys to begin with, just for fun. And then started making things for sale and needed to have them signed. So I got the wood burner just to start signing them. And then that just sort of exploded. We also got the wood lathe for the wheels, just to make wheels for toys. But then he started making bigger and bigger and wilder things. They both just
So I started turning goblets and bowls.
I am the web developer for the College of Fine Arts. That's my day job.
At UT?
At UT,
okay,
yes.
All right.
And I have a degree from there. I've just been there forever. That's basically how I feel about it now. I think 17 years.
She took art at UT before that.
Yep.
We have an Etsy store too, and it's been doing really well lately. So people buying a lot of spoons, and we do vampire steaks, and Sarah puts names and Buffy and all that on it. And so they sell really well on Etsy. Our Halloween season just ended.
I bet, yeah.
So
What's the place in the Lost Boys, where that guy's always tired of the vampires? You sell a bunch of those guys.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do stuff for cosplay. People.
That's something I wouldn't even think about, but yeah, that would make total sense. I've seen those kits that people make on Etsy that have like the stakes and all the.
Yeah, we sell the hammers and we started out, the stakes were just for garden stakes. Like she would put in the name of the vegetable or whatever on it or whatever, and we put it on Etsy, and we were selling a bit of them, but not that well. And then somebody, I think just one day, somebody was like, "Can I get a vampire steak?" And then we were like, "Oh, yeah, we'll put Buffy or something on it." And then, now every and we only sell them for like $10 a piece, but
but they get
every Halloween, it's like a month before Halloween, it just picks up. And just
You might see us around Lockhart looking for stakes and trees, and
Yeah, you're trying to find the right branch.
Yeah, it has to be straight and solid. So we do have an Etsy store. It's at chaoswoods.etsy.com. So that would be where you could see what's for sale, but also just reach out to us. We have chaoswoods.com as our website.
Now it's time for our local tracks.
Hey, this is Austin Burge, and I just wanted to share with you some music from my friend Johnny Ray.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey folks, Emily here from Wella, a local family-owned business right here in Lockhart, Texas. We make everyday foods you love, like Thunderbird, superfood energy bars, and our Wella hot cereal, and more, with only clean ingredients and amazing flavors. You can find us at H-E-B, Central Market, Whole Foods, Good Things on the Lockhart Square, as well as thunderbirdbar.com, wellafoods.com, and Amazon.
You can't picture, Leonard Skinner without Ronnie Van Zant, and Ronnie Van Zant without the high roller hat with the rattlesnake band on it. The high roller actually was created by my grandfather for my dad, who at the time was selling insurance in Waco. When he sent it to him, he put a note with it that, he wasn't anything but a high roller, wanted to go have coffee with the ladies. Selling insurance instead of coming back to work for him. Of course, that triggered it because he started selling more hats than he was insurance.
Come on down to Texas Hatters, where we top the best.
In the story, The Thanksgiving Visitor by Truman Capote, the author sums up the season through his aunt that he grew up living with, who was a single woman who raised him in rural Alabama with very little. From the quote of the book, it says, "We really, all of us, ought to have everything we want. I'll bet you a dime that's what the Lord intends. And when all around us we see people who can't satisfy the plainest needs, I feel ashamed. Oh, not for myself, because who am I? I'm just an old nobody who never owned a mite. If I hadn't had a family to pay my way, I'd been starved or been sent to the county home. The shame I feel is for all of us who have anything extra when other people have nothing." In keeping with the theme of gatherings and feasts, and with Thanksgiving just around the corner, I had a chance to interview a few people from our town about their unique Thanksgiving experiences. First, we will hear from Brittany Herzog, who hosted Thanksgiving on the very same day she gave birth to one of her sons, a story of family chaos and celebration. And then we'll talk with Judy Davis, who has spent 58 years connected to a historic Lockhart farm built in the late 1800s. Together we will explore how Thanksgiving traditions have evolved from the modern-day celebrations to the simpler, more grounded and hard-earned gatherings of the past.
So I was pregnant, expecting my child about 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. And I'm asleep that night, expecting family to come over, and I feel some pains. As a third-time mother, I know that these pains are definitely late-term labor. It's not early, and I'm freaking out. So I call my midwife, and she's like, "Yep, it's time." So she rushes over 3:30 in the morning. The second midwife doesn't even make it there, and my son is born on Thanksgiving morning, probably 3:34 in the morning. And my family is already, planning to come that day. I did a little bit of prep, which was great. So I go to sleep. I wake up. I prep Thanksgiving food. And I asked my mom, "Hey, surprise, I just had a baby this morning. Can you bring XYZ?" And she says, "Sure." And so they all show up the same day.
And you're hosting.
I'm hosting at my house, yes. And I have my partner at the time, and he's at least frying the turkey. So we have that. And luckily I had pre-boiled the sweet potatoes. There were some things done, but there were a lot of things still to do. And so I get up and I start prepping all the things. And my family arrives, and they have brought the ingredients for the things that they were supposed to bring, but they are not cooked So in the midst of me trying to clean my house, cook all of this for Thanksgiving after having just had a baby, I'm having to now like look at their recipes and prep their casseroles that they were supposed to bring. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but I go ahead and push through it. Finally done. It's probably 6:00 by the time that, we get it all finished. And I am so hungry. Make myself a plate of food. Really struggle to get that fork to my mouth. And my mother is in the kitchen and she does this big sigh. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, we had fried the turkey. So typically you make the gravy, the brown gravy from the drippings of the turkey. We didn't have any because we had fried it. So I had just made like a white gravy. My mom does this really loud sigh and she's like, there's no brown gravy. I'm like, I'm sorry, but there's all this food, right? And she's like, well, I think I'm going to run to Walmart and see if they have any packets of brown gravy. I hope they're open. I hope they're open today. And so we'll never let her live that down. Every year for Christmas, I get her packets of brown gravy in her stocking. So she is like never without it. She always has brown gravy in case of emergencies. And so, yeah, so that was my Thanksgiving that year. And I have not hosted since.
I don't blame you.
No, and I'm not hosting this year either.
My name is Judy K. Davis. I was born here in Lockhart. I graduated from Lockhart in 1964. And I have been back to the area 3 different times in my lifetime. I'm now 78. Came back the last time to take care of my father, who was dying of cancer. And that was in 1984, and I've been here since then, this last time. So out of my 78 years, I've lived here on the farm, at least 57 of it, and over 3 different times. From the time I was born until I was about 14, there were 5 families and a total of 11 people. So it was the adults and then the 6 grandkids. And we used the buildings outside, which it's a smokehouse on one side and a milk house on the other with a concrete slab in between. And they would take a table from inside the house here and put it out there, and they would harvest 2 or 3 hogs, 1 cow, and if there was some venison, they'd have that as part of the sausage. But they, of course, had hams and other things besides the sausage. But everything was harvested and then smoked in the smokehouse, and then they put it down in 5-gallon lard buckets. And that's what you just went in and you picked it out, the sausage, and you cooked it when you needed to eat. When we had that harvest, usually either late October, 1st of November, sometime when the first freeze came is usually when they would do that. We would have had a spring garden, and from that spring garden, my grandmother and the ladies would have canned green beans, cucumbers for pickles, all kinds. They would have canned corn from the fields. Sometimes we planted sweet corn specifically for the household, but then other times it was just field corn. Thanksgiving dinner as I was growing up, as I grew up from 46 to 64, we had turkey from the farm. We had ham from the farm. The dressing, my mother's bread, and then later on they added the cornmeal and made it a combination cornbread. But mostly it was the bread dressing with the spices and stuff. The gravy,
like a white bread.
Yes, like she made from, like I said, she used wheat flour and all bran was her bread. And we had the gravy that had the giblets from the turkey and then the eggs from the farm. We had mashed potatoes that came from the farm, sweet potatoes that came from the farm, green beans that were canned from the farm. The salad that we had, the tomatoes, green peppers, onions, and carrots, all were from the garden. Of course, the lettuce we had to buy at the store. We had deviled eggs. We had beets. We had all kind of pickles. Shallots, which are the small onions that come in bunches. That was from the farm. The peach preserves, the homemade bread, and the pies were all homemade. We had 4 pecan trees that they planted in the inside of the square here outside the doorway. that lived for 110 years. And the pecans we harvested from there. So that the pecan pies were made from our pecans. And the custard, pies were, products were from here, the butter and whatever. If it was chocolate or coconut or whatever, you had to buy that stuff. Now, you compare, what are we going to do this coming Thursday? We're having ham, turkey and gravy, dressing, a cornbread dressing, mashed potatoes, deviled eggs, sweet potatoes, green bean casserole, rolls, an apple crisp, a pumpkin pie, a sweet potato cake, and a veggie tray. But none of that is coming from the land. All of that is going to be made by the people coming in and from the store. That is the difference. And the even though you choose and you do organic and you try to make it healthy, it's still not the same as if it came off of this farm. But I say that my first 18 years is why I'm still 78 and still kicking. Not real high, but still kicking and still going, and I drive myself. And I know that the many times that I've been in the hospital, I've got 6 pages of hospitalizations where I've been in just for UTIs 3 years in a row, 2 of them a week long, and 1 of them went septic. If I hadn't had a good body back, I don't think I would have, I should have died 5 or 6 times during all the times that I've been with my illnesses and stuff. Right now, chronic lymphocytic is my leukemia, stage 0, 18th year. Most people don't do that. They die. I've got brittle diabetes, and I've got some heart problems now. And, all of these things I've been able to recover because of my good upbringing. I personally feel that that's what, of course, I tried to eat right when I was raising my children and stuff. But again, you don't have that. You can't get to a central market or to a farmer unless you're in an area where you know that farmer. When you're young, you're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the world's a big blue marble. And if your parents, which mine did, encouraged development, maybe that's the difference that I feel, rather than all of the living that I've done the other 60 years, whether that has skewed my thoughts about Thanksgiving or my responses to Thanksgiving. It still is a marvelous to see the family. And we circle the table, and we've got the big table that seats 14, 15, 16 people, And we circle the table, we hold our hands, and we say our blessing, and then we sit down to a meal. And it's still as poignant as it was when I was the little kid and had to sit at the kids' table versus my grandkids and, doing it now. But as long as the house is here and as long as somebody's living here, it's going to be open to our family or extended family, friends to come in.
We were joined in the studio by a truly remarkable guest, retired Marine Corps captain, actor, author, and legendary military advisor to Hollywood, Dale Dye. With 3 tours in Vietnam under his belt, multiple decorations, including the Bronze Star and 3 Purple Hearts, Dale took his real-world combat experience and turned it into a mission, bringing authenticity to the way that military is portrayed on screen. Through his company Warriors Global, he worked on iconic films like Platoon, Saving Private Ryan, and the series Band of Brothers. We'll dive into his fascinating journey from the battlefield to Hollywood, discussing how his work has shaped how we see war, courage, and sacrifice on screen, as well as talk about some of his writing career. Dale, thank you for taking time to come by and visit with us. It means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to do it. It's, I love Lockhart, and the whole business of talking to an audience of kindred spirits is fun for me.
I want to get to how you came to Lockhart here in a little bit, but first let's start off. When you were a kid, you were born in Missouri, right? That's where you grew up, is that right?
Yeah, southeast Missouri, Cape Girardeau. Yeah.
I was reading that you were hearing stories by fellas that had fought in the Second World War, and one particular was telling you stories about Iwo Jima, and hearing that, instead of saying like, man, I'm glad I'm not in that situation, your reaction was, I'm going to go be a Marine.
Yeah, it was exactly the opposite. I mean, my dad had probably the greatest job a heavy drinker could have and never hold. He was a liquor salesman, and so I used to follow him around to bars when I was a little boy. And he would get engaged with these old guys who had been all over the Pacific and Europe in World War II, and I'd listen to these stories, kind of a fly on the wall. And I said, whoa, geez, that's adventure. That's something outside of Cape Girardeau. That's something on the other side of the mountain. That's the whole world. That's exciting, and I want to be part of it. And I think that's what that was the mosquito bite that initially I grew up to scratch when I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps.
Adventure and hearing the stories of because those are hair-raising stories. I mean, and you've brought a lot of those stories to life. In film and even in the book series that you write, that I'm not sure people are aware that you do both, but we'll talk about here in a minute. Did you enlist?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was an enlisted man. I was enlisted for 13 years before I got a commission.
Okay. And then you fought you were active in Vietnam, of course. Yeah. And
I did several tours in Vietnam during the bad years, 67, 68, 69, and 70. And then that was an experience which I think is seminal to anybody who's ever been in combat. It's something that never leaves you, and it kind of shapes the rest of your life. But I didn't quit there. Later in my career, when I was commissioned, I also went to war with the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit in Beirut, Lebanon, 82, 83. I mean, I was always a career guy. I was having fun. I was in some sad and tough situations, wounded a couple of times, but that never discouraged me. For me, it always said, look, this is what you're meant to do. This is what you need to do. If you really believe in protecting your country and serving, if you believe in concepts like courage, honor, and commitment, then this is where you need to be. So even the tough times didn't discourage me.
Yeah, I was visiting with my friend the other day, and I was talking about Ernest Shackleton and how he's got that wanted ad they still have that said wanted men for expedition, low wages, chance of survival unlikely, call here.
Yeah, right.
And it was, but I think it ended with honor, courage. Completely. That's what you're going to earn when you do this.
I never was in it for the money. Hell, there wasn't any money there. I mean, the business of the GI Bill or home loans and veterans benefits, that furthest thing from my mind. I was focused on the great weight of doing this, and it felt good to carry that weight. This is what I should be doing for my country. This is what I should be doing for my fellow Marines. This is what I should be doing to represent the country. And I know that all sounds like, high-flown rhetoric, but it was really the way I thought about it. And I didn't speak about it that way because you can't survive saying things like that in a bunch of Marines. But it was really what was on my mind.
Did you carry that feeling over as you went to the second part of your career where you became a consultant for filmmakers?
Yeah. When I retired from active duty, in 1984, it occurred to me that, I was at a loss here. I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. Look, I'd always been a storyteller. I'm the kind of kid who can, you're around a campfire And there's this one kid that tells you a Shaggy Dog story, which has absolutely no point, but he does it so well, you're glued to him. And I was that kid. But I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to do with that. And I got doing some of that fuzzy-headed navel gazing that you do occasionally when you're trying to figure out what the hell you're going to do with your life. And it occurred to me that I'd probably seen every military movie, every war movie there was. And the common denominator was most of them just pissed me off. They didn't represent who we were, what combat is like. They were some Hollywood dreamscape. And I said, well, why do we allow that? I mean, that's unfair to the folks who actually fought and who serve and to do it so selflessly. Somebody should do something about that. Somebody should square that away. Somebody should go out to Hollywood and fix that. And of course, I knew nothing about making movies. I just had this concept that there was a wrong and I needed to right it. I guess the bottom line is, if you're ignorant, you can do a lot of things that people tell you can't do. And that was exactly the situation I was in. So I went to LA, I went to Hollywood, and I started trying to sell people on this concept that I had a better way to make military movies, a better way to make war movies. And of course, I hit an immediate brick wall, the Hollywood hubris. Listen, you're a guy who spent 2 decades in uniform. You can't possibly have a creative bone in your body. So just get the hell out of my area and stop bothering me with all this nonsense. And frankly, it was about a year and I was about to give it up. I said, look, I've probably screwed the pooch here. This is not going to work out for me. And I had learned to read the trade papers like Hollywood Reporter and that sort of thing, Daily Variety. And I saw a little notice, I think it was in Daily Variety, that said, a heretofore relatively unknown writer-director by the name of Oliver Stone is going to do a film based on his own experience as a combat infantryman in Vietnam. And I said, oh, Lord, if I can just get to this guy, I mean, he'll get it. He'll understand what I'm trying to do. He'll understand why so many bad war movies are being made. And through a series of machinations that I can't really tell you about because I'm not sure the statute of limitations has run out, I managed to get 5 minutes with Oliver Stone. And I did my pitch, my best 3-minute drill. I went in and I said, look, here's what's wrong with them. Here's how we can fix it. And here's what they should be. And he didn't have much reaction. So I thought, well, I've screwed this up. I guess I'll go home. But the next day, his producer called and said, look, Oliver liked what you had to say. We want to hire you. And so they gave me 33 actors and 3 weeks in the mountains of the Philippines. And the mandate was when I bring those actors out of the bush, after 3 weeks of living on their own and living in holes with me and training, that they had to be who Oliver and I were when we were 19 in Vietnam. And, at that point, I had people like Charlie Sheen and Willem Dafoe and Forrest Whitaker and Johnny Depp, and nobody knew these people. But they sure as hell knew them. When we brought that little $5 million film home, it was called Platoon, and it won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Oliver. So at that point, all those people who'd been throwing me off the lots and ignoring me said, hey, wait a minute, this guy may have something. And I've built a career out of that. I formed a company called Warriors Incorporated. It's now Warriors Global now that we've moved to Texas. And I think we've figured it out. We've done something like 91 movies and television shows, including about 8 Academy Award winners and about 13 Emmy winners. So it's become a big deal. And at the same time, I realized that they're not going to be making a war movie every 3 or 4 months. So you got to find a way to stay alive. And so I started doing music videos. I started doing themed entertainment, anything to do with the military, I could help. And it worked out just fabulously. We built a very big company, a very nice company. And I think the fact that I had some spare time on my hands, I started writing again. And I think at this point, I've published about 12 or 13 novels, all of which are really well received. So look, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, much less the luckiest guy in Lockhart, Texas. That business of a purpose in life, a higher calling, if you will, the business of a responsibility, of giving back to your nation, of giving back to your neighborhood, of giving back to your country, that never left me. And I felt that if what I found myself doing in media and television, movies, television, books, themed entertainment, music videos, it allowed me an opportunity to really shed some long overdue light and some much deserved credit on the men and women who wear our uniforms. And I took that then as my mission. All right, I seem to be successful here. Never forget that that's what you're trying to do. And I think we've done it pretty well. You look at things like Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers and the Pacific and Born on the 4th of July and on and on and on. Ad nauseum sometimes. I think we have accomplished that. I think we've helped the image of America's men and women in uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. You've changed the way that they now make them the way you make them. That's standard, I think. Yeah. And I'm curious, just as from a filmmaking point of view, when you have something like Tora, 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 or The Longest Day, what is the difference in your mind that from that type of movie to what you have been making since the 80s?
It's not so much in the storytelling. Yeah. It's in the look, the feel. And that's really an esoteric term. It's hard for people to understand. They just know it when they see it. But it's the grittiness, the feel that you are there with real soldiers and that real soldiers are reacting the way you think you might as human beings, even though they're well-trained and dedicated and so on and so forth. There's still that human factor. And many films miss that. Or they don't pay attention to it. And to me, that's the crux of it. That's the issue. That's what makes the films we work on special, I think. They have that feel. You may not know doodly squat about the story that we're telling you, but somehow it smacks of realism. Somehow you believe those guys. And that's because we've trained them, we've put them in that situation, and we've allowed their creativity and their imagination to run.
Yeah, that's vibe is kind of, it's also psychological type of thing. What is the behavior? That something like when I think of Saving Private Ryan, and Tom Hanks he finally gets on the beach and his hands are, is that you doing that, or is that you talking to Spielberg about it, saying, hey, they react this way, and I'm kind of curious on how are you influencing that?
Well, I influence it as early as I can. I get in with the writers, and I try to avoid us making cliche mistakes as we go up into getting ready to shoot. But I'd be a fool to try to take credit for the genius of Steven Spielberg or the genius of Tom Hanks. What happens is they'll hear me talk about a specific subject, and it will spark them. They'll say, yeah, I get that. Wait a minute, that'd be great. That'd be a great affectation for Tom, and
right, yeah.
And I think I provide them the ammunition, and they pull the trigger.
Okay, yeah, but it takes all of that to make that come to life.
Absolute synergy. That's what movie making is. That's what making themed entertainment. That's what's making television programs. It's a synergy of creative minds who are dedicated to bringing a message, to telling a story. And they're so dedicated to it that they'll reach out for any source. And I just happen to be one of those sources.
A lot of people who know your work also know that you're an actor as well. You appeared in some of these projects, like you, Colonel Sink in Band of Brothers. How did that come about?
Mostly by accident. The truth is, I'd never thought of myself as an actor. I thought of myself as a teacher, as a trainer. But as you know, the people you remember as teachers, as instructors, as trainers are the people who entertained you. And I guess I was pretty good at that because directors would start seeing me working with their actors and training them and that sort of thing. And he said, that guy, what a put him on camera. And I said, oh, no, wait a minute. No, these guys are trained actors, professionals. I'm just a former soldier who knows how to teach, who knows how to train. And they said, no, we think you're more than that. And the first real shot I got at it was playing Captain Harris, the company commander in Platoon.
That's right.
And I just did what I thought he would do, and based on my own combat experience. And lo and behold, critics began to recognize it. They said, we don't know who that guy is, but he's pretty good. He was convincing. And the next thing you know, I had an agent in L.A., and I had people wanting me to play. I got to admit, I'm the most typecast guy in Hollywood. I'm always that white-haired captain that makes your butt pucker. Me and Lee Ermey were. Poor Lee's dead now. He was a good friend of mine. But we were the two go-to guys for the military in Hollywood. And it exploded into a bunch of roles. I don't get the opportunity to play other characters. I do occasionally, but really they know if they want that military guy, just go get Dale or get somebody who looks like Dale and bring him in here, and we'll do that. And that's kind of how it came. It just exploded.
And so that's made it even more interesting because does it help with the actors that now that you're one of them,
No, and I try to avoid that. I don't want them thinking about acting in the movies or anything like that when I'm training them. That's a distraction. And usually when I suddenly appear as a character in the story that they're working on, it's, whoa, they got the captain in here. And I prefer to keep it that way. Look, I mean, I've done enough movies now where people recognize me and people see me. Hell, it happens right up here. I was at H-E-B the other day, and some guy walked up and said, you're that? I said, yeah, I'm that guy. And he wanted to talk about Band of Brothers and some other things. So it's a recognition factor, but it's not something I go around and crave. I still get the post office here in Lockhart comes up and with a batch of fan mail all the time, and that's a little intimidating and embarrassing, but you deal with it. But the business of pursuing fame and notoriety as an actor has never been very much on my mind. It's all artistic expression, and human beings admire that. Human beings around the world admire somebody who can artistically tell a story. And whether you're creating a country song up at the Pearl and appearing live down on the square, or someone is reading a Kindle with one of your books on it, or you're telling a story at the bar, and you've got everybody fascinated about the story that you're telling. That's all creative endeavor. And I think human beings around the world respect that. A story like The Thin Red Line, for instance, which is based on a James Jones book, it's a psychological story. It's crawling inside a person's head, and that's very difficult to do when you're in a visual medium. Here you are wanting to get inside and see how get inside his head and see how this guy thinks. But it's hard to show that because thinking is not a patently physical endeavor. And so I have trouble going there. I think that if you're in a visual medium, then expressing thoughts needs to be done through physicality. You can't crawl inside my head and see what I'm thinking, but you can see what I'm doing. And if I've set it up right, you'll understand why I'm doing it. And that's really the crux. So I think a film like Thin Red Line versus a film like Saving Private Ryan are different methodologies. They're different storytelling. And there are audiences for each. I like to think that when we do it through physicality as opposed to psychology, we have a bigger audience.
Right. And did you do similar prep for those two films? Like did you take the guys and get them trained and then, okay, now we're going to start to tell this story?
I tried. My executive officer, who's been with me for 50 years, the executive officer in Warriors Global, he and I were young sergeants together in Vietnam, and I drafted him in to become my number two in Warriors Global. He's visited us here in Lockhart, by the way. He lives in Las Vegas. He actually did the training for that film, but it's all the Captain Die method. But he tried. He tried to explain that it's going to be, we can't pick up a camera and put it inside your brain.
Yeah.
So you've got to set it up so that what you do, people understand as you're doing it because it's what you're thinking. It's because it's what motivates you psychologically to do these sort of things. And, it's hit or miss. You're messing there with an actor's motivation, his backstory. And if you can convince him that the backstory will be obvious and available if he does the right thing in the right situations, then you score. I'm not sure we did that necessarily in Thin Red Line.
Well, Terrence Malick is the director on that. And it took me a long time to understand what he's doing. Because he's not telling just the traditional story. It's sort of like film poetry in a way. Is that, is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's a good observation. Look, Terry Malick is a brilliant filmmaker. I've worked with him a lot, and sometimes I find it hard to understand where he's going because he is ethereal.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who will, in the middle of a shooting day, he'll pick up a camera and go expose film of parrots, and he's very ethereal in that fashion. He's a heady psychological director, and that's often difficult to see if you're a dyed-in-the-wool storyteller. You want to say, Terry, where the hell are you going with this? I mean, who cares about the pretty flower in the jungle? It's a matter of the guys in the jungle. But of course, I'd never say that to a director like Terry Malick, but I've felt like it occasionally.
Sure, yeah, it's like you can't see what his vision is until you see the film. But I bring that up because that's that psychology kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
Versus, and then you've got someone like Eugene Sledge in the Pacific who's also in his head, and but that's a different way of telling it. Is there when you're working on that, that's more storytelling in terms of the traditional narrative. But I felt like that Eugene's book. Was it with the old guard? Is that what it was called?
With the old breed.
With the old breed, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the miniseries, that's the psychological warfare alongside of the serious combat.
Well, look,
makes that character work.
A smart actor reads those books, and he has that. Especially if it's based on something other than a script that he's given. So Joe read those books, and he kind of understood who Gene Sledge was, and as a consequence, he brought some of that to it, I think.
When you're on set and they've recreated Bastogne or they've recreated St. Mary Glees or something like that, is there a little bit of the person who enjoys stories being on set and seeing this come to life again? What's that like for you?
Every time I see something historically accurate in an effective manner recreated that we're going to put on film or we're going to put on digital if we're doing television and that sort of thing, it's a reward to me. It says, look, my theory was right. This is going to sing This is gonna give people a look at something that they would just have no opportunity other than what we're doing to observe and to understand. So yeah, there's a great. I like to say sometimes that just doing a really good military film is my Academy Award, is my Oscar. I can do without the red carpet and all that sort of thing, but that's the treat, and that's what lights up my life.
There was a trilogy, and the latest one has come out. So there's Band of Brothers, The Pacific, and then most recently,
Masters of the Air.
Masters of the Air. Can you talk a little bit? That's the latest project.
That took. In fact, that's what prompted my final move out of LA and here to Lockhart. I did a year in the UK working on Masters of the Air. And it was only right because I'd done Band of Brothers in the Pacific, and now here was the third element of the trilogy. But it was tough. We were in the time of COVID, and the Brits were absolutely nuts about it. I mean, worse than America was. And it was a very, very difficult shoot, very hard. The British weather closed in on us, and we were doing all of this high technology, digital stuff in sound stations and studios. So it was a tough one. And I remember thinking, I remember sitting down with my executive officer who was there with me. And I said, Mike, how many of these have we done? And he thought about it and he said, well, I don't know, 80, 85, 90. And I said, I think we may have done all we can. I don't know how we advance it anymore. And he said, you're just being old, shut up. And I said, no, I'm serious. I think I need to get out of the Hollywood rat race. I think I need to find some place I can take a breath. And we had been here to Lockhart. A friend of mine who's a fine artist and a musician in Austin by the name of Gordon Fowler. He and I were in Vietnam together. And Gordon said, look, I found this place, and if you don't buy it, I'm going to buy it. And I said, wait a minute. And we'd been down here to Lockhart, and we looked at this beautiful property on North Commerce, about 5 acres. They tell me that it used to be an old bait shop years ago, and so on. And it's a beautiful house, decorated by a Chicana fine artist, Mercedes Pena, who lived in it for a while. And I bought it. I said, look, this is where I want to be. Now, that was years before I made this decision after Masters of the Air. But I called the wife and I said, look, I hate to do this to you, but pack it up. I don't want to be home very long before we leave everything in L.A., get out of Hollywood, get out of the rat race, and we're going to Lockhart. And so we did. And we've been here, I guess, a couple of years now, and it's been just wonderful. It's a wonderful creative environment, and it allowed me that breath. I'm not pressured all the time by Hollywood and that rat race and that ego factory, and I can be here among kindred spirits. I can be here among people who understand concepts like fidelity and virtue and patriotism and that sort of thing. And I can shorthand that with people. And they don't say, oh, you must be a weirdo. You must be. They appreciate it. They understand it. So we've just enjoyed the hell out of it and are still enjoying it. And my family's now here with me. My son, Chris, is a musician, and he does special effects in movies and television now. And we're all living together quite happily on that property.
Are there any anecdotes from doing all of this that come to mind that you may want to share with us?
Look, it would take you 2 weeks to hear even a short version of those anecdotes. I could tell you about the time that Tom Hanks hit me right in the gonads with a hand grenade.
Yeah, that would work.
I were training Tom for Forrest Gump, and I did all the Vietnam and anti-Vietnam sequences in Forrest Gump. And I was training Tom and Michael T. Williams, who played his partner Bubba, And I was trying to teach him to throw a hand grenade. And so I had these dummy hand grenades that weighed about 1.5 pounds. And I said, all right, now here's how you do it. You pull pin, twist and pull, take a look, and you throw it like this. And you don't, not like a baseball. You got to kind of lob this thing. And I'm instructing them. And Michael T. Tries it the way I taught him to, and so on and so forth. What I didn't realize is that Tom Hanks is a jock. He's an athlete. This guy can throw a ball. So I'm standing about 30 meters away from the foxhole where they are. And I looked at Hanks and I said, all right, let's go. Pick up that hand grenade, pull pin, and I want you to throw it right at me. And I'm thinking it's going to hit, 10 yards away from me. He wound up and pitched that thing and caught me right in the crotch. I mean, it doubled me over. I said, that's fine. We'll get back to this. But things like that happen constantly, and they're part of the great humor of what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
But as I said, it would take us 3 weeks.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dale. It's a pleasure to talk to you as usual, and thanks for taking time to come by.
Sure, Steve. Thanks very much.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you do like our show, please give us a review, or you can become a subscriber where you can help tip the bands and artists that appear on our show. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Texas Hatters, Wella Foods, Thunderbird Bars, in-kind sponsors, Our Printing Solutions, Williams Island, Courthouse Nights, the Rock House Airbnb, Birdie House Airbnb, Gaslight Baker Theater, and Crystal Blaze Photography. Our show is produced by Kate Collins, recorded at Troubadour Image and Sound here in Lockhart, edited by myself, Stephen Collins, with help from Danny Manning. Social media managed by Crystal Glaze. Music on this episode was by Jonny Burke, Jonathan Ray Case, and myself, Stephen Collins. Main titles from Band of Brothers by Michael Kamen. 78644 is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Radio Public, and everywhere else where podcasts are streamed. You can get in touch with us at 78644podcast.com, and that's where you can find out how to become a subscriber. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving.